recorded live.
Hello, this is the Ascension Energy Program conference call tonight with Kevin Courtois and William Kirkland. The topic of the night will be resistance levels, both spiritual, emotional, and mental, and what happens when they occur and what to do about them. And this is a direct result of some of the problems that I've gone through personally and some of the things I've seen within the client base and over the course of the last 7 months with me over the last year. So I'm going to begin by talking about, I'm going to be relating mostly to my experiences growing up and then, of course, within the context of the program, the bioresonance program over the last year. Spiritual progress, emotional progress, whatever you want, whatever goals you have in life, you need to have a goal first off. And 90% of the problem is about laying something down that you want to achieve or accomplish, and then working towards an outcome. Growing up, I didn't have any goals, hence I didn't really have any outcomes, and I thought my life was pretty random and chaotic, and so I adopted belief systems that didn't believe in any set of principles initially early on, basically as a byproduct of what I was brought up with the environment within the home. I had a father that was all over the map, and then my mother also had her own problems, and it was like at home, everything was like a fire drill. Dad comes home, you don't know what's going to happen, and ends up there's a lot of yelling and screaming, there's a lot of trauma, and that pretty much was like a daily occurrence. And I would escape the house in order to kind of run away and feel calm and somewhat at peace. And you basically you inherit all your. Someone put on mute star 6. Getting feedback. So basically, hello? All right. So basically,
this is Bill, Kevin.
Oh.
Okay.
All right. So basically, we have a problem of running. I've lost my train of thought because of the feedback. So you have all this chaos in your life, and you basically adopt a lifestyle of chaos. So I inherited the lifestyle of chaos from my parents, and, that stuff rolled on for the next 20 years, 25 years, until I would hit all these blocks where, I'd get really frustrated, and then I would fall back into the same patterns. Now, it wasn't until I began using the tool of self-examination did it begin to remotely even unravel. This is a little annoying. All right, so if people are on the call, you got to use star 6 to mute it. It seems like there's a feedback that's interrupting with the call. All right, so basically you're running down the hill, a life bundle of chaos and drama. There's no rhyme or reason to what I was doing, but there was a pattern. There was a pattern of failure put in place. So I basically was recreating the lives of both my parents. And I use my financial timeline or lifestyle as really a good barometer of things. I got my first job. I was 15. I was a caddy, a looper, they call it. And I always worked hard. And, by the time I was a senior in high school, I had 2 part-time jobs working, 30 to 40 hours a week. And that's basically, what I did through college. And, after college, I would always really work hard. I always liked making money. I always liked to, I did adopt some sort of Puritan work ethic as a result of, observing what I didn't see in my father, but my mother was a hard worker, so I pretty much adopted her belief in hard work. And, I sat there and expended a lot of personal energy, and at times I would make a lot of money, at least in terms of being a kid, 18, 19 years old, and it was all derived through labor, so there was a ceiling to how much you could make. And, I'd start, I'd get in the positive range, the surplus, and then, something inside me would want me to start spending a lot of money. And then I'd come up with all these rationalizations and justifications for why I needed to buy the second car, why I needed to take the trip to Hawaii, why I needed to go out and, maybe go out and binge on a night in the town and spend a lot of money. And, inevitably I would get back into debt. And, so I go through this cycle of being, clear of all debt because I worked really hard to clear the debt. And then I would dive right back into debt, not less than, a week later. And then incrementally it would grow and grow and grow until it got to be a point it was unmanageable again. And then I said, I can't live like this again. And I would go work it off and pay the debt off and then, reach equilibrium. And, the cycle just played out for, a good, 15 to 20 years. And it wasn't until I looked back, like, I don't have anything. I have I have no goals. I have no, I have a bunch of stuff that's broken. I don't really have any real assets. I didn't set any real, do I want to get married? Do I want to do this? Do I want to do that? What kind of career do I really want to have? And the jobs were, labor jobs, working as a bartender, this and that. And it was this anger and frustration that was building up inside of me because, I began to want more out of life than just this kind of repetitive cycle. And so, you hit these resistance levels or walls. And, I found that, it was time to reevaluate self-examination. So, pain, this massive amount of, spiritual, emotional pain was the very thing that was the leverage that I needed in order to get beyond myself. And so at one point, maybe I was like 26 and I had been bartending and I, working the Hamptons, and I just totally had, at this point, been totally jaded with this lifestyle. And I didn't want anything to do with it. And I'm like, well, what do I do now? And so you go into this internal self-examination mode. And so, for me, I adopted the spiritual quest relatively young at 26, and, I started diving into, contemplation, basically, and I would go into churches and sit there 4 or 5 hours at a time and just sit in silence, not knowing, and absorbing the energy of silence. And then gradually this, internal mechanism, which I define as intuition, began to turn on. And so I began to get clarity internally, and then this superhighway of synchronicity began to unfold, and I became, self-directed internally and began following a roadmap which is nonlinear. And that comes through a sense of surrender or trust. And so I began to see my relationships in terms of my family growing up, my father and my mother. I saw the similarities between my mother and my father. And rather than focusing on the negative things that I didn't like within both my parents, I began to see the good stuff and began to get rid of and let go of the bad stuff. And so that was when, humility, probably had the first humility in my life came in when I was like 26, after I was spiritually broken, emotionally bereft. And, I was, at another point where I didn't have any money again, and I'd gone through several cycles of this stuff. And, I began this internal quest, and as you kind of go, I had a plaque on the bathroom wall that my mother put in growing up, and it said, "God writes straight with crooked lines." And, everything that, I looked at in life, I always looked at it as a line of upward progression. And, the idealism of youth is, there is no end to anything, that everything just goes on forever, and that you have a sense of omnipotence, too, the sense of eternal power that you can do anything. And, so I'd set these really unrealistic goals, and by setting these completely unrealistic goals, I never did anything to actually achieve them. And then I created a whole ideology of justification in order to justify not moving towards these dreams and goals that I had. So I had these dreams that were out of touch with reality, and then I had a sense of self-satisfaction within myself, why things were not working out in my life, with a whole series of rationalizations and justifications that basically kept me in the same spot that I was.